Good afternoon. Welcome back to another live Lunch and Learn with Network and Chill. I am your co-host, Red, with my other co-host, Rick, and we're excited to talk health equity today. Really got a phenomenal guest. I'll kick it to Rick to kind of give the say thank the we and we so the uh, health equity work that Ben is doing to break in a quick introduction and we'll bring.
All right, it gives me great pleasure to introduce Ben Reno-Weber, Deputy Director of the Health Equity Innovation Hub at the University of Louisville. The Health Equity Innovation Hub is a $25 million initiative supported by UofL, the Humana Foundation, and Humana Inc., aimed at closing health equity gaps. As Deputy Director of the Health Equity Innovation Hub at the University of Louisville, the team Ben works with is leveraging an investment by the Humana Foundation to make the innovation ecosystem in healthcare more open, transparent, and equitable, while elevating the voices of those that live the experiences to give them a unique insight into the most pressing issues in health. In the process, he gets to hang out with innovators, faith leaders, community members, researchers, technologists, startup founders, industry thought leaders, investors, health practitioners, which he thinks is pretty cool. As a Louisville native, Ben started his career as a social entrepreneur with the World Bank's Global Microfinance Unit, focused on creating greater access to capital among marginalized communities, particularly in Balkans and former Soviet Union. He earned an MBA and MPA from Harvard's Business and Kennedy School and joined the Boston Consulting Group in 2009, where he focused on corporate culture and change management. On his return to Kentucky, he ran a series of organizations at the intersection of business and social impact, including nonprofits, startups, and foundations funded entities. As former director of the Microsoft funded Former Work Initiative, he worked to build the local skill base in the data economy workforce, with a particular focus on connecting resources that support marginalized community members to obtain future-proof jobs in technology and AI-related fields. In 2023, his wife and three children finally acknowledged that he's the master of dad jokes, and that is apparent. Thanks, Ben.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks for joining us today. How to find or what's your background? Uh, you- what are some of your primary duties that you do there on a daily?
So on the daily, my job is to support the team that we have that does phenomenal work in engaging with entrepreneurs and innovators from around our community and nationally. So deputy director is sort of like all around garbage pickup person, whatever other people don't want to do. But the fun stuff that we really get to play with as an organization is around how do we provide resources to sustainable innovations that are trying to close health equity gaps. So it turns out that equity, in addition to being a social justice issue, is also the most expensive problem in healthcare. And there's a huge amount of opportunity for the people who are able to address those health equity gaps. And it is the philosophy of our organization that the people who are best able to do that are the people with lived experience there. So what we're trying to do is really give those entrepreneurs and innovators access to the resources that they need so that they can benefit from the solutions that they can see better than anyone else.
What kind of charge early on. Take health equity is a big opportunity. And to the opportunity for me to step into, be
Chris, I'm sorry, man. I think you're frozen.
Yeah, I think he's frozen on my side. So I'll just go ahead and continue on. So, so Ben, I want to step back a little bit and talk about, your career before this. So what kind of led you into, the health equity space? I know you talked about social impact, jobs that you've done. I didn't know about the Soviet Union thing, so that's kind of cool. So I'd love to, hear a little bit about that and your career prior to, joining the Health Equity Innovation Hub.
Yeah, so I'm from Kentucky, and I did a program when I was here through the YMCA that was called CUNA, as a Model United Nations program. And in that program, as a high school kid, we would represent different countries. So I got really interested in, Kentucky boy, like when you get to think about what's going on in Rwanda or in Japan. So that got me really interested in international stuff. So I went to school in DC. And as part of that, I got to study abroad a couple times. And one of the places I studied was Russia. And what I saw there was that there were all these incredibly motivated people who just didn't have the skills, the business skills to operate in a capitalist universe. So I ended up coming back and then getting deployed, getting a job for the World Bank, which was focused on microfinance. And microfinance is these very small loans, mostly to it ended up being mostly to people from marginalized communities or entrepreneurs who were marginalized, a lot of women in cultures where they didn't encourage entrepreneurship there. And it was where these very small things made a huge difference in people's lives. I mean, like we would work with organizations that would give loans as small as $17. And people could buy chickens with $17. And then they would sell the eggs and they'd pay us back. And then they would get a bigger loan and they would buy more chickens. Or, stuff like I would buy rice in bulk instead of in cups. And that transformed people's lives. So that was really interesting to me. And then part of what we saw also was there's just a skills gap. So, people they might be amazing entrepreneurs, but they don't know how to do accounting. Yep. Right? Or they don't know that you can't commingle your personal and your business funds if you want to have clean books that you can take to a bank. Yep. So, that's just something that everyone has to learn. I certainly didn't know it before I started doing this work. I mean, you sort of it's either you absorb it or you don't. So having that background, then after some journey of doing other things in the United States, those same things are true for entrepreneurs in our community. Access to relatively small amounts of resources to get going and a set of skills. And then I would also say, what you guys are phenomenal at is the community and mentoring of people who are like you, somewhere on the journey, maybe a couple steps ahead to help you know where you're going, and then also maybe a couple steps behind so you can help people. You need those things. So it's been really fun to be doing that in the community that I'm from.
Yeah, that's really exciting. I think that the piece you're talking about, a couple steps ahead, a couple steps behind, that peer-to-peer mentorship piece, Ben, is so critical. We always are talking about that. And I think that's where a lot of the magic happens is those are right around you that can actually pour into you, you can pour back into, and really allow for that collaboration. And really allows us together move the ball forward.
Yeah, and I love what you said about, the thing about having your books and mixing that up. I always say you got to go from hustler to a business owner, and that's really the big difference is I'm my books are right. I'm making sure everything's accounted for. I'm, checking and doing these things that I wouldn't have done before when I was just trying to fly by the seat of my pants and figure, this thing out. So I think those are huge things and huge points. Like you talk about equity, They're in training
Yeah.
entrepreneurs and getting them prepared to actually, you know, raise capital and look like a fundable company.
I think in recent well, which doesn't mean you can't get paid either, right? Like you got to get paid, and I think that's a transition point for every entrepreneur. It certainly was for me. Like, hey, all right, now this is a side hustle, and I'm just putting in my time, and I got to do other stuff. Versus like, nah, this is gonna be my job. Like, okay, but jobs got to pay enough that, and I think this is something that investors have to understand. If your founder is struggling to make rent, they're not focused on their business the way they need to be. Right. And so, I mean, that's true of nonprofit leaders. That's true of everybody. Like, so there's gotta be enough in there that you're still hungry, but you're not stressed.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and so as far as moving into the Health Equity Innovation Hub, so I think when most people hear, they think about healthcare and, you know, things like that. Like, you're going to help me from a health standpoint. Let's talk about how the Health Innovation Equity Hub is helping create equity beyond, you know, healthcare and in the community. Like, we talk about entrepreneurship, food, ag, all those spaces. Like, what are some of the things out there that you all are focused on and working on currently?
Yeah, no. So, I mean, I think the real insight here is coming from the public health space, where there's now a recognition that your clinical outcomes are so driven by these social factors, right? If you are post-operative, you know, from a heart surgery, but you don't have food in your fridge, it doesn't matter. Like, you're going back into the hospital, like, and that's super expensive. Or you can't get access to regular primary care to catch things in their early stages, or you can get access, but culturally, you might not be welcomed into the medical system, or you've had bad experiences in the medical system, so you just put off going to get your appointments until something really bad has happened. And, you know, that's really expensive. So there's obvious social justice components to that, which are important. But the thing that's exciting to me is, as there is a broader recognition that that has financial implications, well, now we got a business, right? You got a customer. If I can stop you from going into the ER, and that ER visit is $25,000 to an insurance company, well, that's $24,999 that insurance company has to invest in stopping you from going into the ER. And there's lots of great examples of companies that we're working with, or companies that we want to work with, that are doing that kind of work.
I mean, preventative maintenance is always cheaper and easier to do than major repairs.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I think, like, preventative maintenance broadly defined, right? Part of why food is so important to us is that food drives so much. And if you don't have good, easy access to culturally appropriate, healthy food, like that's how you get into these horrible, like, pieces of cycles of diabetes. And, that's, so the nice thing is that the medical system now has recognized that that's something that they need to prioritize. Now, what we need to do is be sure that the people who actually understand those problems in, like, a deep way are the ones that get a seat at the table to be doing the solutioning and selling those solutions into the space.
I fully agree. It's almost like reverse engineering, understanding where we should be building and focus our time to. And when you talk about that, also who's building solutions and coming to the table, Ben, and one of the conversations you and I had, right, is having a fuller understanding, right? So there's health equity, and then these different pillars you're talking about that you can potentially be building in and providing solutions in, particularly at the hub. I think you mentioned like maybe 6 different pillars or a few different pillars. Can you talk through a couple of those different pillars as well to kind of give the audience, potential entrepreneurs, ideas of maybe creative solutions they should be looking into?
Yeah, for sure. So I'll do the first 3 that we're working on, because part of what we are doing in this coming year, thanks to a grant that is almost all the way through the pipeline. I'm not gonna say who it's from yet until it's actually signed in blood. But we're gonna run 3 innovation challenges, and what we're gonna do is pick a topic area we're going to work really closely to align the call for innovation so that it sits in the Venn diagram of what community needs and wants, what industry is willing to pay for, what academic research says is best practice, and what entrepreneurs say is a business model, right? So those are the four audiences that have to give input into every part of the process that I'm about to talk about. And then we're going to do this innovation challenge. We're going to invite local entrepreneurs and national entrepreneurs and innovators to respond around food, around maternal health, because as you might know, there is a massive equity gap in the outcomes for mothers between Black and white women, Latino and white women. And then what is likely to be transportation in the medical space, but not necessarily to and from hospitals. So food, maternal health, transportation, likely. We're gonna do 3 of these in the next 18 months, where we're gonna offer $100,000 of grant money, no equity, no dilution, to 5 innovations for each of those areas. So those are our priority areas, and then we've also got environmental justice, housing, and employment, and wealth generation.
Man, that sounds like a huge opportunity. I mean, I know a few ag businesses that could use 100K right now to, help the community and would have a huge impact, with that. I've seen a couple of pitches, from folks. So I think that's going to be huge to, have a competition geared towards those particular areas and supporting those particular missions. I think that a lot of times we hear people focus on the money, it's all about the returns, but I hear this competition focusing on the impact that, these companies can have on the community and, meeting those, needs. So I applaud that. I think that's huge.
Yeah, and let me be clear, we're also interested in the money. Not for us, the beautiful thing about sitting inside the University of Louisville is that we're not taking equity stakes in any of these companies, but we are really focused on solutions that can scale. So I think about one of the companies that we're working with is called the Nori Project. I don't know if you guys have heard about this entrepreneur from Eastern Kentucky, came to UofL as a student, got her law degree, lived in the West End, and when COVID hit, was like, no matter what credentials and degrees I have, I still can't get food delivered to my house. So she'd had an experience in Japan where she saw these fresh food, hot food vending machines. And she said, man, why don't we do that where I live? And so she's a brilliant example of a solution that I would never have seen. And she can identify parts of that are just not part of my lived experience, but they're part of hers. And so she talks about this as an equity issue. She's like, in these machines, they're going to be able to accept SNAP and EBT, right? Because if it's not cooked food, now all of a sudden you've expanded the market of people from where now there's a little bit of this technology like in airports. But like if it accepts SNAP, you could do that with community partners in lots of spaces that you couldn't otherwise, and make that a financially viable thing, both for the people that you are trying to impact, but also for the entrepreneur. And then you start thinking about how you do supply chain work, right? So you talk about all these urban farmers, all these folks who could be putting stuff into those machines. I mean, that's ripple effects of coolness. And that's what we're going after.
It is, but yeah, no, I agree, because I think when you're talking about these issues, right, there are nothing but opportunities, right? You can do good and do well at the same time, and I think that it's been overlooked and underserved, and that's where it lies. Where I love the focus on lived experience you just talked about, right, with this entrepreneur, but also in the same aspect, we all have a lived experience to build a better community that we live in here in Louisville. And the opportunity, when you look at this, when you can identify the problems and place a target for entrepreneurs to go build in, solve in, then we can actually change the entrepreneurial landscape, right? We can actually support them. We can actually grow and scale companies here locally. And it gives us almost like a focus to look at these areas. And that's why I want to pull those areas out of you, because I was like, it's so important for folks to hear that and understand that and say, hey, let me go solve this. Let me go build a
Right.
company in this area, in this
Right.
arena.
And this is where I think these early stage small interventions are so important, right? So I think about, so for Honora, who is the entrepreneur I was just talking about, each of these machines is somewhere between $6,000 and $10,000, right? So, and as soon as she can get those up and running, that's awesome. So she needs to raise some capital, but part of also, she came with us and pitched at a group where there's hospitals in Eastern Kentucky, and watching her talk to all of these workers who support, all of these hospital employees who support uh, workers, they were like, oh, there's no place for our staff to get healthy food when they come off third shift. Like, yes, we want our patients to have access to this. Yes, we want this in our communities, but man, like, what a thing for the workers. Well, now all of a sudden, you know, Honora, who's brilliant, but doesn't know, wouldn't know how to get access to the CFO of a hospital system, right? Like, because you don't know that until you know it. So that's where bringing industry to the table is so important, also, because if you need customers. So it's super fun.
Yeah, I think that's huge. What you said, bringing industry to the table. And that's one of the things I guess, been talking about, week after week, is how do we bring industry to the table and educate our executives about startup and why it's important to support startups and to take risk, on startup, even if it's in small ways, with your business, but to take those risks on startups in your local community. Because if you want to see economic development and you see these things grow, then we're going to see these businesses start to, support these startups and give them a market. Because most people tell me, oh, you got to go outside of your market to sell. You got to go outside of your market to sell. And I'm just like, well, that means I'm not being supported by my market if there's a market here for me to sell into. And that doesn't make sense.
Yeah. And I think part of that is understanding what are the incentive structures for industry, right? And what are there was a piece where KFC for a while was trying to move into the fast casual space, and they ran a pilot. And I remember really clearly, like, is in my neighborhood, they started this thing and it completely dumpster fired. Just didn't work. Everyone involved in that got fired. And so it's important to understand, like, the reason that a lot of industry doesn't work with early stage or small company is not because they don't want to or they don't care about the community. It's because internally their incentive structure is to avoid risk. So what we try and do is containerize that risk. Okay, you're going to support this innovation challenge with this limited amount of money for this thing, and then you're going to pilot it. And they can be like, all right, I can absorb that amount of risk. It's been validated. I've seen it. I've tested it. Okay, great. And that's where, like, philanthropy and donations can be the catalyst for that early stage capital. And then you're looking to connect them to the people who could buy that, who want to, but it's not, as a good friend of mine who talks about this is like, Humana will kill a startup. They pay net 90 and you got to meet all these requirements, and you could be a long time before you see money out of that, what would be a perfect partner for you if you're early stage.
I'm in education, so yeah.
Oh yeah, dude. I mean, right? Like, yeah, well, obviously, like, this is all hard stuff, and it's stuff you don't know that you don't know. I mean, that's the part of the other piece, is having people who've been there, done that, to say, like, watch out for this. I wish I'd done. I usually say, like, I want you to learn from all of the things that I did wrong.
Yeah,
but I love to make those mistakes yourself.
Yeah, I think finding those companies, though, that are looking to be innovative and have, like, research hubs as a part of their company and research and innovation as a part of their company are the ones that, you're really going to find the ones willing to, I guess, take risks, because they're already looking to be innovative, and on the cutting edge. So I think that we need more companies that are looking to be innovative and to do research and bring that in as a part of their company and their, future plans. Because, I mean, if you're going to succeed in the future, you're going to keep growing. Usually you need to do some R&D and have some growth kind of plans there.
Right.
And with, things being very tech centric, we have a lot of businesses that could probably use, those skill sets.
Well, and something else I want to bring up that you mentioned tech centric, like often your first company is not your last. And so part of what we try and do is really pour into entrepreneurs, regardless of whether or not they are scalable. I mean, we have a certain set of resources for the companies that are health equity aligned and scalable, but also we're really looking to build the ecosystem of organizations that are supporting these early stage Black and brown entrepreneurs, regardless of what their business is, because the first business that they do, great. I've got a real estate business. I understand a P&L. I've registered the business. I've got whatever. But then I see, oh man, medical transport. You're telling me that Medicaid will pay me $150 to get somebody from A to B? Like, I can definitely do that. And that's where we work with a set of groups. We work with the Urban League. We work with Sowing Seeds with Faith. We work with you all around how do we support those kinds of entrepreneurs before they're doing the kind of business that's really mission aligned for us.
Yeah, Ben, and that piece is so critical. I say that's the planting seeds, right? Because I think we all already know, you never know what's going to be your first business, second business, or a third that may explode. It could be down the line, but we have to instill a culture in a way of fostering failure, fostering learning while doing the thing, right? It's okay. If it doesn't work out, then I can come back and do the next one. And I appreciate that work because it's important and you're looking across the landscape, not just the early stage businesses, but also the scalable businesses. And then with the pilot and this innovation competition, really, if you have one that's really, really successful, now companies are like, hold up, we have something here. And like Ricky said, they may start pouring more dollars into those areas. We just got to have a great use case.
Well, and I'm really glad you brought up failure because I think that that word has different connotations in different spaces. So Dave Christopher, who runs the Russell Tech Business Incubator and Amped and a variety of other things, said in a call that we were on after some of the things for 2020, like how do we support Black-owned businesses? And one of the facilitators said, well, what do you want? Dave said, I know exactly what I want. I want to be able to fail like Ben Reno-Weber. And at first I was like, ouch. I hurt a little bit. Yeah. But what he meant was, I've had the opportunity to try different things in different parts of my career. When I ran a YMCA, we would try these programs and some of them were amazing successes and some of them were dumpster fires. And people kept giving me chances. And particularly for entrepreneurs from historically marginalized communities, like you feel like, and might be right, that you're never going to get another shot. And so creating an infrastructure and a space where people can try stuff and be like, I know that even if this one doesn't work, there's going to be another chance somewhere. That's really important.
Yep.
And the only way to do that is by having, mentors and examples and programs with people who look like the entrepreneurs you're trying to cultivate.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like people don't realize that startup entrepreneurship's like going to the league. Like your chances of being successful when you look at the numbers out here are dismal. So, I mean, for you to even believe that you're going to get out here and, be successful is one thing. I mean, that takes a huge amount of confidence. And, for you to keep striving and going for it, I mean, fail or not, like the lessons that you've learned and, you've accelerated that like so much by, just taking that leap. And I think that we don't talk about that enough, just about the experience of, running that company and, that failure or whatever you want to call it. And we oftentimes like your second company is the one that's the most successful, not your first. It's their second, third. So those failures are stacking those bricks.
Or the market that you think is going to work. I mean, I think so. I founded a company after I ran a YMCA, and the company was focused on volunteerism. And I was like, listen, I know volunteers. I don't know anything about startups. I don't know anything about technology, but I know volunteers. I know what that market needs. So we're going to go after nonprofits. We're going to go after YMCAs. We're going to go after schools, but also we're going to go after banks. We're going to go after aging care, like, we're going to go after all these things. And we sold like 2 YMCAs. And they were both personal relationships who were like, oh, I'll give you a couple $100 to like do your thing. We sold 0 banks, couple of credit unions. And we sold just volunteer tracking. So I was like, I became an expert at the court service trade shows. I'm telling you, that is a space. And it didn't work. And so my co-founder and I had to like really look at each other and be like, are we going to keep investing in trying to sell to these spaces, or are we going to focus on schools where we know we can sell things, even if that cycle is long and then the customers all feel poor? But each one of those was like a failure. I mean, there's no question about it.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, and kind of go back to your comments with Dave Christopher, it's such a true statement in a sense where that mentality when a black and brown entrepreneur feels like they can't fail because they won't get another chance, it also creates a sensitivity where they're not taking risks. They're not doing the things. They're trying to be risk averse on what they're doing. So it also takes away from that current business that they're even building to be how successful it could be, because they're afraid of that potential failure. And we already know how hard it is. And I think when you can take that lid off and let founders be creative, let them take risks, take chances, and they don't feel like down the line if it doesn't work out, they're outcasts. I think we'll also see a different mentality as entrepreneurs build their companies currently.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Yeah.
All right, Ben, we have a few minutes left.
Well, no, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say the other piece that I think is really interesting in a community like this one, like within the Network and Chill, but also, particularly in Louisville, is people are approachable in a way that they're not in bigger communities, which gives you access to their experiences in a way that's different than, my experiences in New York or DC, where people are like, you stay over there. And here they're like, oh, like, I want you to be successful, and here's what I have to offer. So I think about, one of the service providers and entrepreneurs that we work with a lot is this woman named Shala, who spun out of a Silicon Valley focused UX, UI, branding and design firm, and now is working with startups here. And she started this thing as Studio Mod, but she has this vast experience of what venture capital firms want. It's just unusual here. And so, and I wouldn't know any of the stuff that she's like, oh yeah, we're going down Sand Hill and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like Googling, Sand Hill, wait, you mean like Sand Hill, oh God. And she's just like, no, yeah, this is a thing that I did. So I think that's like, being able to access that kind of resource here is powerful, even just to know what's possible. So it's a shout out to you guys for like what you guys bring by bringing people together so they can see what's possible.
Man, community, I think is huge. Like you're talking about that support network, those folks that tell you, hey, we failed, like we did that same thing, we pivoted, we made that, same change. I think that's huge to have that community around you and to hear that from everyone. Like, I think that's that's how you grow. Like the lessons were learned in the losses. The lessons weren't learned on the wins. So I want to, hear about those losses so that I can avoid, those pitfalls. And that's the privilege. I think some of those things, that's the privilege thing that we talk about, and community can give us that privilege by sharing our stories with one another and our knowledge, because that's what it is. Like we can share our experiences, and that's going to help the next person. I mean, whether they're in your same lane or not. And I hear, locally, like that collaboration and support there could take us further than, Louisville. I think that sometimes we get on that Louisville mindset and the pie is not big enough for us. So we got to fight over this little pie. But like we have a whole United States and a whole international, worldwide business that we can like run now. And we have to get, over that and, learn that collaboration will help us grow beyond our, help our Kentucky ecosystem, but grow beyond our Kentucky ecosystem into these new markets.
And a piece that I don't want to glance over, Ben and Ricky, is that we don't appreciate enough the amount of talent we have in our community. We have a ton of folks with national, global experience, and a lot of times we're looking outside of our communities when we should be looking within our community, because we have a lot of talented folks here. And it just takes, and like you said, Ben, they're very close, they're very touchable, very attainable to talk with. And I think we need to take advantage of our experience that we already have in this community and grow it, because we have a ton of talented folks here, a ton of talented entrepreneurs, a ton of people with great hearts doing great work. And that piece, I think we have to make sure we take advantage of, because there's a lot of momentum right now. And if we work together, that pie Ricky's talking about is going to be really big.
Preach.
All right, man. Let us know, how can folks engage right now, joining us, can support the work that you are doing? What are some upcoming things that you have on your horizon?
So, a lot of what we focus on as the Health Equity Innovation Hub is around supporting the existing infrastructure. Because at the end of the day, we are grant funded and we're going to go away at some point. So, part of what we're doing is supporting groups like you all, like RTBI, like working on some getting entrepreneurs. So I'm happy to engage with folks. I'll put my email in the chat. We've got a couple of buckets of work that we can work with people on. So one bucket is we have free tech trainings. So if you want to learn Power BI, you want to learn Excel, you want to learn some of the precursors to AI, like we've got that. So happy, it's through the Center for Digital Transformation at UofL. So we are happy to partner with you guys on that. And yeah, we can send out some information to your folks about that. If you are a company or interested in starting a company that's connected to addressing health equity, we've got these innovation challenges coming up, but also we've got resources. We've got space where we've got internet and coffee downtown and parking. We've got, we can connect you to other vendors and entrepreneurs. We've got UofL students who we support with experiential learning. So it's closed for the spring, but we're going to be accepting applications for companies for the fall. It's called the Engage program, and I'm happy to connect people to Hannah Estes on our team. So those are a couple of areas that you could engage with us, and we're cheerleaders. So the other piece we want to do is highlight the people who are doing awesome stuff.
Yeah, man, and we just want to say thank you all for your support of Rhetoric and Network and Chill in the event series. It's been awesome to partner with you all over the last couple of years to, create. We'll continue to carry out this event and to curate the community and, build on, like I think Carolina said, the trampoline that we're leaping on.
True story.
All right, as we close out, I just want to give you all details. We have an upcoming networking event next Wednesday, March 22nd, 5:30, at the Loft at Biscuit Lounge again. It's an opportunity to connect with other folks in the community, other entrepreneurs, other executives, other professionals. We enjoy these events that we've been doing quarterly. We're doing this in collaboration with YPAL next week, and so excited for the work. But Ben, I just want to say publicly that I appreciate your friendship, appreciate the support you've been giving us. It's so important to have that kind of collaboration. We don't take it for granted, and we're excited for the work that you're doing over at the Hub, and we'll continue to support you in all ways that we can. So thank you again for taking some time today.
Good luck on the campaign trail.
Yeah. All right, take it easy, guys. Thanks a lot.
All right, take care. Peace.